Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reich. Are you trying to master the game of life without success? There are secrets and strategies to living your best life. We'll share some of them with you on today's show. Take advantage of this series to become an expert at relationships. All relationships. It's time to live the life that you deserve to live. Now, here's your host, Sandra Reich.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reich, a show about living your very best life. So we talk about all sorts of topics, psychological, nutrition, all sorts of things of how to reach for your stars, a topic that I've never tackled. And such an interesting one has come up recently in my life, which is, what is it to be an entrepreneur? So the idea started to percolate in my mind because I had the great honor to be asked to go on a show about being an entrepreneur. And I met my guest on the show, and he fascinated me because he really knows a lot about being an entrepreneur and what does it take to be a great entrepreneur. So I'm going to introduce him. And before I do that, I'll just mention, if you want to join the conversation, you can call us at 1-866-472-5792, or you're always welcome to text in at 514-796-4357, or email at info@helpforanxietydepression.com. So my guest today, his name is Josh Miller, and Josh Miller has been learning from and assisting entrepreneurs his entire professional career, which began in 1989 at an accounting firm where he is a partner and has been for 20 years. He has lots of experience with privately held companies, from startups to just putting an idea in someone's head to long-standing multi-generational businesses. He is a pro on this stuff, and his goal remains the same all the time: to help entrepreneurs reach their goals and make their business better. And he does host an amazing radio show, if you are in Montreal, called Today's Entrepreneur, which is a radio program on CJAD 800. And the show highlights inspiring stories from entrepreneurs. And he's interviewed, at this point, we'll check if this is true, over 190 entrepreneurs about the good, the bad, and ugly of their ongoing business experiences, which I definitely want to talk about because there's definitely good and bad to being an entrepreneur. But first of all, welcome to the show, Josh Miller.
Hello. Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. So I had the honor to be on your show, and you asked such thought-provoking questions that I find myself still thinking about it. I never really thought about what it is to be an entrepreneur. It's a lot more difficult than I thought it would be to be an entrepreneur. And I really wanted to theme today's show. Again, we talked a bit before about this, about the good and bad, firstly, of what it is to be an entrepreneur. Because I know many entrepreneurs like myself, and perhaps you or perhaps other people you've spoken to, thought that being an entrepreneur would be great because you'd never have to answer to anyone and you'd have all this free time and it'd be wonderful. But that's not exactly how it played out. But I'm curious, before I talk about me, what do you think about this word being an entrepreneur? Are there a lot of demands on it? Is it good? Is it not good? Talk to me.
I believe, it's a very wide question. And some people think entrepreneurs are born. Some people think they're made. I personally think they're more born than made. And often I hear, because on the radio program, you kind of want to, as you'll talk about yourself soon, you kind of want to find out why somebody went into business for themselves. Often you'll hear them say, I didn't want to work for somebody else. But that's not really the true story. The reality is they have ideas. They want to go out and do it. There's no question what you said earlier. I can make my own hours. I can, I can be my own boss. There's no question that's part of it. However, making your own hours doesn't mean, okay, I'm going to work 9 to 5. When you're an entrepreneur, that is quite the myth. There's the time on the clock doesn't necessarily dictate when you're working.
So would you say that, like, the first thing you've mentioned, like time and the hours on the clock, is that one of the greatest demands of an entrepreneur, is that you're really never done?
I think a true entrepreneur is never done, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they sit behind the desk and work. Their mind is always thinking. A typical entrepreneur means the mind is always, the hamster is in the head and is always turning. Doesn't mean you're behind a desk all the time. Doesn't mean you're on the road all the time. It doesn't mean all that aspects, but the mind is working. It also depends what stage of entrepreneur. Are you a startup? or are you really more established? Are you 30 years in? You know, I started out just as a CPA, and I was an employee at the firm, FL Fuller Landau, and it was great. But when you become a partner, you are becoming your own entrepreneur. Because I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Ever since I was in school, it was really, what do you want to be? I want to own my own business. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to work with people. I'm going to become that entrepreneur. But you have no idea what that really means. It's just kind of a word that's out there until you're actually in it and you actually do it. And you actually realize that, at least in today's world, you know, you might not get 15 emails a day. You might get 115 emails a day. There's one aspect, and you know, whether we get to it now or we get to it later, and it's really about balance.
Yeah.
And when you're an entrepreneur, you're working in business, there's about balance, because there is family, there's friends, there's work, there's customers, there's clients, there's employees, there's your own time, your own. It's really, there's a lot about balance.
Okay, so, you know, to go back a little bit, so you said we mentioned you've been working for FL Fuller Landau for over 20 years, or you've been a partner for 20 years.
Partner, I've been here actually 29 years.
29 years.
Next month will be 29 years, but partner for just under 20 years right now.
Amazing. And you're saying that you believe that entrepreneurs are born more than they're made. So you feel that you're fulfilling your destiny, I guess.
I did, you know, and it was, thankfully so, I was able to do it in the place where I'm comfortable. I would say entrepreneurs mostly don't like to sit still. And I don't like to sit still. I mean, right now I am, because, you know, we're on the program, but I don't like to sit still. I mean, this week is a perfect example of not sitting still. And that's why I think I fall into that category of entrepreneur. It's really, but, you know, is there too much on the go? Then there's that balance again. It comes back to it. But doing something different every day is really what I think drives me in any event as an entrepreneur. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's certainly the challenges are definitely something that drives most entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I feel the same way. Now, there are many good points and bad points to being an entrepreneur, and I think it would be remiss if we don't talk about both sides of that. For example, you know, I still like the fact that, you know, I don't have a boss, and I get to make my own decisions, and I get to meet a whole bunch of amazing people. And also, as an entrepreneur, in a way, your income situation, your potential is somewhat limitless, because
Correct.
It's really up to you. And this key word, which is a little bit of a trick word, is freedom. You see, at least there's an illusion of freedom. I don't know if it's really freedom, but I'm curious. Those are the things that I think are very good. What are the things that you think are very good about being an entrepreneur? For in case someone's listening and they're like, I think maybe I want to be an entrepreneur. What's good about it?
You get to express and follow through with your own vision. That's really, at the end of the day, it's your baby, it's your puppy, it's your drive, it's your idea, it's your vision that you are executing, most likely through a team that you've hired or put together very strategically. But at the end of the day, you're going in the direction that you want to go in. And you're not going in a direction that somebody else is telling you they think that you should go in if you were just an employee. And I think that, to me, is the biggest benefit, because you know, of course, if you have ideas, as most entrepreneurs do, but it was really dealing with that love, that passion, that you can go forward. You know, if you have some great ideas and you're working, you have a boss, and you're kind of locked to your desk, and you have some great ideas, and you want to go 100 miles an hour down the road, and you can't because he says, no, sorry, that road's closed. You must take the other road full of potholes. And, you know, when you do it for yourself, you can navigate through, you can choose your own path. Doesn't mean you'll be right all the time. This has nothing to do with right and wrong. This has to do with drive and direction and what entrepreneurs love to do.
So it's almost like what you're talking about is almost a psychological term, like the locus of control is in your hands, right?
It absolutely, well, most of the time. There are some things that are out of your control, as we all know.
Because control's an illusion.
Crystal balls are usually quite foggy. So it's not always easy to control everything, but there is that illusion of control. Or at least, if you can't control it, you can decide where to stop and where to redirect.
Yeah. So that's a very powerful thing. And certainly even if it's the sense that you have a locus of control is very meaningful to human beings. Freedom is very meaningful, and living things out as you see fit, as you described, is very meaningful. There is a downside to being an entrepreneur. What is it?
Failure. Well, failure. The downside, okay, the first thing that I think comes to mind, the downside is sacrifice. You're definitely sacrificing something. If you're trying to build a business, you at some point are sacrificing something, whether you're sacrificing time with your family, your friends, whether you're sacrificing and spending your savings that you might not have later, whether you're sacrificing your ability to grow in another direction because this is the one that you want to take. So I think sacrifice is one of the topics that people don't always talk about or share. Usually, I think because they don't want to face it. I mean, you can tell me how many people do you know that love to face, their fears and their sacrifices and want to talk about things that they're not doing and regrets. That's not exactly a popular topic. I'm sure you agree as you sit and you speak with other people. So I would say sacrifice is at the top of that list for me, because it's really quite all encompassing of what it means to maybe the downside of an entrepreneur.
Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this particular episode, is to talk about these things, because the mistake in general that we make as a species, humans, is we look at a situation, a successful entrepreneur, and we think, oh my God, look how lucky that guy is, and look how great that situation is. So I really appreciate you mentioning sacrifice, and I think we're going to go further than that, because I think there's a common thing to think that there was no sacrifice, that you just got lucky, you hit it big, and being an entrepreneur, you were one of the lucky people. And to bring it up to us that there is always sacrifice is an important thing. So it's not all roses. It's not. And then, of course, there's what happens when you fail, and what happens, how do you come back from your failure?
Oftentimes I ask the question to guests, and I think I asked you this question as well, Sandra, and that was, well, if you could, transport yourself back to the beginning with the knowledge you have today, because there's so much experience that we accumulate, and you could do anything differently, what would you do? And I'll tell you, 98 times out of 100, or in this case, 193 out of 196 so far, I would say, they would say, you know what? Nothing. Why? Because I needed to have those failures to get me where I am today. But at least they had the ability to get beyond those failures. And that's something I think, just talking about it, we should explore a little further, is how do you come back from a failure? What is the mentality? What is the mindset that you need? What are the little things you can do to come back from a failure? You can tell you're a great radio host, because that's exactly the way we're going to segue. We're going to take a break and definitely talk about what happens when you make a mistake or you fail in business, and how do you come back from that. You talk about the fact that you can turn your mistakes into lessons, and that's great. But when it first happens, I can't wait to pick your brain on that. So we'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats, and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
A fresh look at today's health. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
I'm so excited to be talking with my guest, Josh Miller, today about being an entrepreneur. And we ended up on the topic of, if you're an entrepreneur, there's risk and things can go wrong and you can make mistakes and there can be failure. So Josh, I want to know about how someone can come back from that, but I'm going to challenge you a bit further than that. It's going to be a two-part question. I want to know what someone should do when they're in that situation. And I want to also know if that's happened to you and how you dealt with it.
I'm gonna start with the second question first.
Fair.
And for me, I'm gonna tackle it a little differently because little failures happen all the time. But for me, it's failures for me really, and I'm trying to find the exact word to go in, but I feel overwhelmed. Like when something happens that's bad, I get overwhelmed because I start thinking a lot and what could have happened, and I replay it in my head 20 times at least. And so for me, then I get a little overwhelmed. So it's how I deal with being overwhelmed, because I can get the overwhelmed feeling from a failure or just from like too many emails or whatever it is. So for me, I put in a category of being overwhelmed and how I handle that feeling. So there's three things that I do. One is I retreat for a little while and I just kind of bury myself in a movie or something if I'm at home, and I just try and escape the world for a couple of hours, or sometimes all day if it's a Sunday and I don't feel like catching up on stuff. Two is I deal with a lot of little things. So when I feel overwhelmed, I don't go to the thing that takes the longest first. I do a lot of the little things and clean up, and just so I can feel like I've accomplished something. And then when I have that sense of accomplishment, I feel better to move on to the next. And the third thing, which kind of, I don't know how it's going to sound, but I just tell myself, you know what, tomorrow's another day. Stop what you're doing, go home, maybe you're tired, chill out, wake up the next morning and go again. And usually I'm much better the next day. I kind of write off the day and I move on. I have the sleep that happens, that gets into my system. I'm a little more alert, or a lot more alert, and I tackle it then. So those are the ways that I deal with either coming back from failure or for what I call feeling overwhelmed, regardless where that comes from.
Very balanced, very psychological. Those are strategies. Before you go on, I just want to, pick your brain a little bit. You talked about retreating and going to watch a movie. You also talked about entrepreneurs, and I'm one, who are constantly thinking, how do you do that? How do you watch a movie?
I actually have the ability to turn off my mind. In other words, I can actually think of nothing.
Wow.
And I also have the ability to focus. So if actually I have the ability to focus and not focus. I could have three emails coming in at once and go back, but I do have the ability to focus. So if something's on in front of me, then I can be all there. If I'm in my office and I'm on a conference call, even though there's lots of emails, I can stop and I can look at my window and be on my phone and just kind of focus on that call. So this is not being focused on business, this is being focused on my vegetative state in front of a movie. Right. That says, okay, you know what, I'm choosing to spend these next couple of hours doing that. It's whatever, it's a mindless film or thought-provoking film, doesn't really matter, but it's an escape from the current real world. It's not an escape for a year, it's a short time span, so it's not running away, because you can't run away, or at least I don't feel I can. And but it's a great little mini escape.
Well, it's interesting because what you're describing is really being mindful and being really in the moment. It's a great skill. By the way, in research, it shows that men are much better at this than women, by the way, the ability to think of nothing. So kudos and a big advantage.
Have you ever been able to think of nothing, Sandra?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't think so. And when I read that research, I felt so much better about myself, because apparently the male brain is different than the female brain and has the ability to shut everything off. And the female brain, like we always talk about multitasking, we're always going back and forth from the left and right hemisphere. But it can be taught through, again, being mindful and living in the moment. So what you're doing is also almost meditative in nature. So do you think that what you just mentioned about being overwhelmed is part of the answer of what someone can do in an acute failure situation?
In an acute failure situation, I think you need to surround yourself with the right people, or at least the right person. I think in an acute failure, if you can't talk it out, there's a problem, because if you internalize everything all the time, because you can't always find the answer yourself. And I recognize that too. I can't always find the answer myself. And sometimes I do find I guess it's a fourth version for me to deal with my overwhelm, is that you just find somebody and you talk it out. And whether they answer back, whether they have a solution or not, sometimes, as I'm sure you've experienced, it's not venting, it's just kind of talking it out, throwing it out there. Sometimes you listen to yourself better when you're vocalizing something versus not talking and just leaving it, circulate in your head. So I think surrounding yourself with the right people, the right friends, whether it's business colleagues, whether it's family, whatever it is, a support network almost. And it doesn't have to be 12 people. It can be one. And it might be the strangest one, because if you have an acute failure and it happens to be with a specific supplier or employee or customer, you might actually go to somebody you would never think, because they're in that situation with you. So a little bit case by, generally speaking, have a person, but that person might surprise you. You might talk and open up to somebody that you never thought about it because they were in that situation with you. So it's kind of, I don't want to say commiserate, because it has a negative connotation, but really it's talking it out with the right person.
Yeah, and I'm guessing choosing these right people takes some time, because there's got to be a trust aspect to this too, as the advice they're giving you. You got to feel that it's sincere and not, there's no ulterior motive. Is that right?
It is, and one of the aspects, or one of the traits that not every entrepreneur has, is the ability to read people, and it's a bit of a lost art. Because you do need to know who you can trust or who you can't trust, and getting out of failure or getting out of whatever bad moment that you're in does require the trust of some people, and you really have to, only experience will dictate that. And it's different if you're trying to get out when you're 20 years old or when you're 50 years old, because at least you have some experience and establish the right contacts later in life than earlier in life.
Do you think entrepreneurs burn out more than non-entrepreneurs?
I think that there's a very good chance of burnout. I have myself thought every now and then, in those moments where you escape for 2 hours, like, okay, I don't think I burn out because I come back and it's all good, but there's a definite possibility that entrepreneurs can burn out faster. It depends on the individual. Some entrepreneurs, I've met a slew of different type. You have your type A personalities. You have your people that deal with what type personality are you, Sandra? No, we won't ask. But you have people that have
outing me.
We have it kind of depends on the character that you are. It really comes back. Are you somebody that needs to lash out to get it out of their system, or is somebody that internalizes a lot? Really, it's your own person that's going to dictate where you are. So entrepreneurs, I would say the ones that are on the go all the time and that are putting in, I would absolutely equate it to hours. I would equate a lot of burnout to hours. So if you, I'm not saying it's the only thing, but if you are constantly working and you're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week in, week out, you hit your 3,000 hours a year or whatever it is, which is 50% more than the average bear or the norm, then I think you will burn out faster, or you have the chance to burn out more than somebody that works less. Here's the fork in the road in that, in my own opinion. You can do those 3,000 hours a year and not burn out if you keep changing path, direction, vision, if you keep reinventing yourself. I use that term often, reinventing yourself. Every entrepreneur must go through a reinvention of themselves, or a product or service, their business, whatever you want to call it. They must go through that periodically. I'm not saying every year, but if you're not reinventing yourself every 3 to 5 years, you are going to stagnate and you're going to push yourself into a corner and into some type of burnout, I think.
I think that's a very fascinating point. So I've got to go a little further on this. So let's define what reinventing yourself as an entrepreneur would mean every 3 to 5 years. What would that look like for you, for me? What does that mean?
I think reinventing yourself is really looking at your business, because I'm not saying, go reinventing yourself, go out and change your hair color and clothes. No. That. It's not what I'm talking about. From an entrepreneur standpoint, I'm talking about looking at your business and changing direction. Are you're selling, you're dealing with anxiety issues, and you're being a great entrepreneur because you're and a great therapist. However, you know what? Not day in, day out. I want to go do something else. So I create a new business. Do you have a feeling how that is, Sandra? You start out doing one thing and then you create maybe 3 or 4 other businesses out there.
Oh my God, you know me so well already. I don't know you that long. How is this possible? Yes. So we'll be right back on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats, and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Your life, your health, your network. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
So we're back. I was talking with Josh Miller, and we had a little technology issue, which is interesting because we're going to talk about technology and the entrepreneur in a few minutes. But Josh was in the middle of explaining, and he was teasing me a little bit about the fact that reinventing yourself, and he means by that your business. And he was talking about, and I was explaining that, I opened one business and I opened another one and another one. It just sort of happened. I never thought of it in terms of reinventing myself, but it makes sense because while I lost you, Josh, I was thinking about that part of the burnout is that when an entrepreneur loses their drive or passion, which would happen from doing the same thing day after day after day. Is that right?
Absolutely. That definitely, that losing that drive or passion is no doubt there's something that really drives you in a different direction.
Okay, so reinventing yourself within your business is making sure that you're still keeping it exciting. Because I really agree with you, because I remember hearing years ago, it's not a question of if you burn out, it's a question of when you burn out. And I didn't like that. And I think that the two things, and I wonder if this is true for you, that have saved me is one, to never let it get boring, and two, to take lots of vacations and time away from it. What about yourself?
I definitely don't take a lot of vacation. However, I do have a lot of fun at what I do. So if I don't get away as much as I want to, which I think I should do more. I think I do need to disconnect, although just bear in mind, I'm in a service business. So I'm helping entrepreneurs every day. Nobody's ever died from an accounting emergency, but I do believe in giving phenomenal service. So that means that I like to stay connected. Doesn't mean I have to answer everything at the very moment, but I like to stay connected. It's part of who I am and the professional that I've chosen to be. So even when I'm away on vacation, I still have my BlackBerry. Yes, I still have a BlackBerry, and anybody can laugh at me. And I respond when I can, but that's just me. So when coming back and saying, do you take vacations and reinventing, it's really, you're right. Don't get bored, because the moment you get bored, and the moment you feel like you're going in the same direction, it's like Groundhog Day. You keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. You might want to just reach for that gun and put a bullet in your head. Changing it up, which I think most entrepreneurs have it in them. It's an innate response, or it's really inside them to keep changing it up. That is absolutely crucial to not hit a wall as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I wonder, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because you did say at the beginning of the show that, what's great about being an entrepreneur is that you have that control. And I think that people who become entrepreneurs perhaps have a low tolerance for boredom to begin with. So if they start to get too routine, if they start to sell their soul a little bit. But ironically, listening to you, and you're the entrepreneur expert, it also sounds like you're saying that it actually would hurt the business too, not only hurt the entrepreneur.
100%. If your leader is not leading, things will go downhill from there. If your leader and you being the leader, the entrepreneur, doesn't have the right vision and doesn't change course when you need to, and doesn't stay on top of the business, you will lose. Things will go bad. I always equate it. Running a restaurant is a great example of an entrepreneur that needs to really mind the store, so to speak. When you run a restaurant, if you're not there, if you don't have your face there, your body there, your mind there, your everything, that restaurant will fail. I guarantee it. Okay? Give her even, and it could be the best of franchises, but if you are not there leading the troops and giving guidance and changing course when you have to change course, that restaurant will fail. I will say that applies to pretty much any business. If you are not there, if you are not giving guidance, if you are not leading, if you are not giving direction, if you are not being present, because you can be there and not be present. We all know that. If you are not, there and present, then there is only one way that business will eventually go. And it might not be overnight. You might have a great product, but it will eventually get there.
So, it's so much to talk about with you, because before we go into technology, that makes me think of what are the, it seems like, just so I'm clear, so people go to you for advice on being an entrepreneur. Like I would call you up and say, like, I need some advice, correct?
I would not to this extreme, but I'll say I'm the Ray Donovan of for entrepreneurs. It's a bit of a fixer thing. Find the solution to a problem.
Great show.
A great show. So really, my role today, and it's evolved over the years, is really just finding solutions for entrepreneurs' problems. Because that's what happens a lot, because a lot of entrepreneurs get in the role of putting out a lot of fires. But the more fun aspect is actually the strategy and thinking ahead. Because anytime somebody comes with a problem, it's a time to learn. It's a time to not really focus so much on the past and the problem and don't bury yourself in that, but it's, hey, okay, this happened, this is how we fix it, and this is what it should be like moving forward. Learn from it, fix it, and look ahead.
Right. So, you just talked about one of what I would call one of the biggest mistakes an entrepreneur could make. You talked about not being present in your business. And I'm guessing that someone like you would have a whole list of what the biggest mistakes an entrepreneur could make. And I'm sure people listening would love to know, what are those big mistakes that you've seen?
I would say not being present, that's definitely one of them. Closed-minded, not good. Not listening to the right people around you. I would say, but the biggest, bar none for me, biggest mistake is not admitting or recognizing what you don't know.
Can you elaborate?
Sometimes pride gets in the way. Sometimes money gets in the way too, because when you're a startup, you're bootstrapping, you don't always have, money to spend on people. But although it's really not hard to get advice for free. There's a lot of people that love to mentor. But I would say it's really, if you don't know what you don't know, then how do you ask for help? How do you move in a better direction? Because if you don't know it, you're not getting the answer from yourself. I mean, if you do try and give the answer yourself, it's likely to be wrong. It's likely to take you in the wrong direction. So not recognizing what you don't know is huge. I would say most entrepreneurs are more on the sales side than the buy side. Because you're three types of entrepreneurs. If I categorize them from a business, there's 100 types of entrepreneurs. But if I'm going to categorize it in a business, I'm going to say an entrepreneur that's really on the sales and marketing end, your strength. You have some entrepreneurs whose strength is really on the operations and buying. You have some entrepreneurs that are more on the finance side. So if I look at a business in whole, and I'm not, I know I'm not getting every single detail, but if I look at those big three, I would say, okay, so the sales guy is going to look at the top line, and he doesn't necessarily know what it takes to buy or to finance. So hopefully he recognizes that and gets the right people to make up for his weaknesses. However, not everybody's pride lets them do that, because they think, okay, if I do that, I'm going to look like a failure. I know that fear of failure. So I would say one of the biggest problems that I've seen with entrepreneurs is them not recognizing that they need help in certain areas they don't have the ability to do.
That's a very interesting point, talking from a psychological viewpoint, which I'm always interested in, because that's the danger of our egos. And you're talking a little bit of emotional intelligence, is the ability to have the emotional intelligence, and to be able to say the words, I don't know, or I need advice, right, is extremely, I would say, such an act of strength. And yet we are very fearful of it. We're fearful that we'll look vulnerable and weak. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it applies beyond entrepreneurship. I think it applies to our relationships, our parenting, and everything.
100%. 100%.
Great point. You mentioned getting a mentor. That caught my ear. And you mentioned that even when people are at a startup situation they can't afford, because I think what you were alluding to is it's always good to reach out to someone like yourself and hire someone to get advice. You also mentioned if someone doesn't have the finance to do it, that there are people who will mentor you. Can you say a bit more about that?
I think I think I happen to love, part of my role day to day is mentoring, whether it's future professional or professionals here in the office. But I happen to love talking with people and try to help them. So for me, mentoring other professionals outside the office, so not from the firm, but really outside, for me, drives me. I'm not the only one in the world like that. So there are people out there that really want to help. If you're and especially if a more experienced person, I won't say elderly, a more experienced person out there does typically have time to give back. And I would venture to say that a lot of experienced individuals, experienced entrepreneurs want to give back. They want to share their experiences. They want to tell their story, and they want to help others grow. And I think if you have a little industrious, you as an entrepreneur, as a young entrepreneur, absolutely can find those people. They are everywhere.
Important, very important. It's really great advice, Josh. There's so many things I still want to talk to you about before we run out of time. Here are two that I want to make sure we get through: is the technology and the entrepreneur. I mean, technology has added a lot of stress to our lives. We know that in every aspect, even if you're not an entrepreneur. You mentioned your BlackBerry. You mentioned checking your email. Yes, I'm the exact same way, even on vacation. Technology makes us reachable 24/7. What do you think about this added stress level for entrepreneurs and technology?
I think when you talked about burnout earlier, I absolutely think it will create burnout faster than not, because you're getting hit and bombarded all the time. Email is obviously the biggest culprit. Although now, I mean, there's so many ways to reach somebody: instant messaging, Skype, email, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, social media. I mean, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. How do you keep up? Because it's not just your business. It's not just your customers, your suppliers, your team. There is family. There are friends. You can't fall off the face of the earth, because then you won't have any family or friends. That's not good either, and that's really bad. So then it comes back to the balance that we were talking about much earlier on. But it is absolutely, technology has created for the entrepreneur two things. One, added to the level of stress, there's no doubt. But two, have created levels of expectations that are not always so easy to manage or to meet. And I talk about our own business. We're in a service business. We deal with entrepreneurs. We provide whatever guidance, whatever support, whatever tax returns, financial statements, consulting, whatever it is. And when somebody has a question and they email you, is there an expectation to answer back right away? 30 years ago, people would send a letter. You get a letter, you get it 3 days later, you write a letter, they get it 3 days later or a week later, whatever it is. I remember one guest on the show, I asked him what was the biggest change. He was an architect and urban planner. And I asked him, what was the biggest technology change? And here I am expecting him to say, the AutoCAD and all the software that helps him, really be more accurate and plan with the buildings and urban planning. And his answer to me was the fax machine, because it went from turning around, it went from 1 week to 1 hour. That's what sped it up the most. And he said from then on in, it was people expected. They send me a fax. They would want my immediate answer on drawings. It adds to the stress level, because it created a much quicker expectation, a much greater expectation of what you were giving. So I think that's where it's hurt the most. Now, as an entrepreneur, you can try to control those expectations. At least communicate with your supplier, your customer, your team, saying, "Hey, send it to me. I create a policy. I'll answer you back within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever you train." We entrepreneurs are their own worst enemy, as far as I'm concerned. We train people poorly.
We teach people how to treat us.
I mean, how many times have you looked at somebody in the eye and says, maybe you shouldn't say it's your fault for doing it, but at the end of the day, they've created their own problem.
Yep.
So I'm saying entrepreneurs can also create their own problems. They can also manage them and get themselves out of those problems with the right words, the right communication skills.
So like what you mean by that, just to be clear, is that if I'm constantly answering my clients at midnight every night, then there's an expectation. And the first time I don't do it, I'm going to get an email saying, you know, what kind of caring therapist are you? You're not responding.
It's exactly what I mean. It's exactly, you gave a perfect example.
Okay. So
technology, I think, it's forced us to be faster. It's forced us, you know, when entrepreneurs, you know, we were talking about vacation earlier, and, you know, the benefits of slowing down every now and then, technology has an effect of taking away that aspect, that benefit.
So, Josh, are you saying then that as entrepreneurs, we should sometimes turn off our technology?
I would not. I would say it, but I don't practice what I would preach.
At least you're honest.
Yeah. No. I am guilty. I culprit. Ask my wife. No, don't ask her. Yes, I think there are times where we should absolutely turn off.
Okay.
I wish I could follow my own advice, but I can't. Because the reality is, if you don't turn off, because when you turn off, it actually should breed great ideas. You know, you stop, you get to think a little bit more versus react.
Yeah. It's a good point, but it's almost what you're saying is like, we should do what you say, not what you're doing. Basically, yes. I couldn't agree more, honestly. And it's a struggle for me. Like, I can even add on to that point that when I, you know, even get a massage, like my type A personality says, I don't want to get a massage. It's a waste of time. I've got work to do. But when you have the free floating ideas, you have nothing to do. A lot of creative ideas do come up at that time. So it is a really important point. I'm scared that we're going to run out of time, and your brilliance is so appreciated. So I do want to ask you about understanding your team, and especially when your team their behavior starts to change. That has to be a big challenge when you're running a team and you're an entrepreneur. And I know you know a lot about this. Give us your best wisdom on this, please.
If you, and I'm, you know, it's a little bit of also being able to read people, being able to understand tone, body language. And I would say if you don't have that ability, and I'm skipping to the end, I'll come back. If you don't have that ability to read people, to read body language, to understand tone, go read a book, go take a course. It can be a learned skill. I would say often, you know, you can have some innate moments and innate ability to do that, but there are many things that can be learned in this aspect. Go learn it. It's going to help you in every aspect, not only with your team, but with your customers, your suppliers, and your negotiation. Anything, go learn it. So coming back to the specific question, understanding your team, the entrepreneur is not the one doing everything day to day. You know, definitely doing a good chunk of it. And I'm not talking about, you know, a one-person show. I'm talking, you know, you have a business, you have, you know, 10 people, 100 people, whatever it is. You're not flying solo. Your team is the one that is the face of your business, that is the one dealing with the day-to-day aspects. If it is your machine, it is your manufacturing machine. And if something is not working, if you have a cog or, you know, a screw loose, so to speak, then you have to identify it. If somebody is responsible for dealing with customer service, and they're having, you know, they're going through a divorce, and it's coming through in the tone and the emails or whatever, you need to recognize that. You need to tackle it, to address it, however you have to, whether, you know, in whatever supportive way you can, but you need to do that. I'll give you, you know, there was a few team, and we're going through one of our big projects now internally, and there's a few people that have to work on it together. They need to be able to work together. They don't always work together, and we recognize that, and we addressed it. But if you don't address it, it was going downhill real quick, and that project would have never, would have never really even gotten off the ground. So you really need to be in tune with your team that is dealing with your customers, your suppliers, and working together. And if you're not in tune and you can't manage those changes, recognize and then manage it, failure is imminent. Failure is imminent. And what the one thing I'll add to that is even more interesting when you're dealing with various generations, because there's different mindsets that apply. So under our roof, we have 4 different generations under one roof. Wow. That's a lot of different mindsets.
Yeah.
And your approach with each one is typically different to get the best out of them.
Absolutely. So, if your team is starting to, if you see someone, if I understand this right, if you see someone's not happy, it's the ability to be able to read them. And I suppose we could add into it, it's also knowing what people want, because I think sometimes people think that the answer to everything is to give people more money. But the truth is that doesn't always mean something to your team. Money is not always what's meaningful, right?
I wholeheartedly agree. And as a matter of fact, but I will make a caveat. Again, generations. Money will mean more to a 50 and 60-year-old than it will to a 20-year-old. A 20-year-old, 25-year-old, whatever it is, that generation will be happier with a little bit less money if they have a little bit more reason to be working, or a little bit more other items that can be given. And some of them really want corporate social responsibility. Some of them want to know that the company they're working for is giving back to the community in some way. And I think it's not, the more people you have, the more policies and creative you have to be sometimes.
It's so true, and such useful and helpful advice. I want to start to wrap it up with 2 very important questions for you. One is, who is your ideal client, Josh?
Ideal client. Somebody that is, I won't talk about money, but somebody that is, I would say, open and willing to talk and look forward and accept advice, or not accept advice, but willing to talk things out, and willing to knows that they don't know everything and willing to go out and ask. That to me is a great client.
Well, we have many listeners, and I'm sure many of them are listening to you and thinking they'd like to be in touch with you. How can they be in touch with you?
I guess you can certainly, you can go to our website, flmontreal.com. You can find me on there, Josh Miller. You can reach me at jmiller@flmontreal.com. And find me online. If you type Josh Miller, Montreal, or even through Today's Entrepreneur, our radio program on CJAD, you can find me that way.
Your last greatest piece of advice for our entrepreneurs listening right now.
If I had to say one, it's funny. I asked that question to everybody else. Nobody ever asked me that question.
Yes, I stole it from you.
Thank you. I would say my one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur, it would be reinvent yourself. Know when you need to change direction. Be open to that. That to me, I mean, there's so many things you can do, but for me, having the ability to recognize when you need to reinvent yourself, that's crucial, because otherwise you'll stagnate.
Great advice, and I really want to thank you so much. We're out of time for today, but thank you so much, Josh Miller, for all your brilliance on being an entrepreneur. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming on Straight Talk.
Thank you so much, Sandra. It was great.
I'd like to also thank everybody for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reich, and I'd like to invite you all to come back next week. If you're interested in anything you heard on the show today, our retreats, therapy, Josh Miller, anything at all, just feel free to go on helpforanxietydepression.com. You can also go on our Facebook page, Straight Talk Sandra Reich, as well. You can leave a question for me or Josh or any of our guests, and don't forget to like us while you're there. If you're a professional and you're looking for keynote speakers or training, remember, we are your evidence-based practice and education source. My name is Sandra Reich, and I promise I'll help you learn to live your best life again next Thursday, same time, same channel. In the meanwhile, this is Straight Talk with Sandra Reich. Keep your eyes on the stars.
Thank you for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reich. We hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we'll tune in again next Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. Now, go live your best life.